Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. As Maggie said, I'm Julie Bright. I've been doing this for a while. My career has taken lots and lots of different roller coastery kinds of twists and turns, as I expect is true for most of you. We'll be talking about what that looks like, both from kind of a strategic perspective and also how do we take care of ourselves while we're going through these changes. So my degree is in psychology. That was a while back, but my passion is really about the humans in the systems that I support. That's what I care about the most, and understanding what the humans need in order to thrive and be joyful is super important to me. So I study things like that, and I think that it's really the heart of agility is the humans that are at the center of everything, and the culture building stuff, which is sometimes devalued in people like us. I think that gets swept to the side too often in favor of like hands-on keyboard delivery kind of work, but it's really, really important. And so I'm here carrying that flag, trying to validate that for all of you. If you have come to this session, I expect that you are looking for ways to navigate changes in your own life, but that you are also agilists who are both learning all the time about change management and using techniques that you already know with your teams. So we'll talk about how some of those things that you already know can relate to your experience as you navigate your squiggly career path. So all that said, I think I will just get into it. So a squiggly career. What is a squiggly career? There's a book called The Squiggly Career. I saw a conference talk by one of the women, the two women that wrote this book, maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago now. And something that she said completely blew my mind. I'm going to share it with you, and maybe it will help you to reframe things as you walk along these paths. So I wanted to just make a pitch for these books that really help you think about things in different ways, which is what we're all good at, right? Is thinking about things in new ways. So it used to be in the past that a career progression was pretty linear and there were steps in it and there was a progression. My dad went to college in 4 years, got a job at a company, and stayed at that company until he retired with a pension. That's not what it looks like today, right? But I think a lot of us have grown up thinking that that's what it's supposed to be like, and so when it doesn't look like that, it causes us a lot of angst. One thing that you can do if you are starting to reframe your career, whether you've been laid off or whether you're not happy where you are, whether you just want to progress in some new kind of a way, is to do what this is like a journey map, right? So there's some design thinking that you can bring to the table here. And we don't have time to actually do all these activities. I'm going to present them to you, and then you can look at the slides afterwards and sort of use this as a springboard to do your own design thinking about your own career and the things that you love. So this is one activity that you can do where you just imagine that middle line as sort of a baseline, and then you think about a timeline, what happened in your career and what did it feel like to you and what was going on when you had those peaks and valleys. And you may find some patterns and some things that you really love that you want to lean into. So this is just one way of thinking about it, and it comes from this book. What she said that blew my mind was, we think of our strengths and weaknesses all wrong. We think that our strengths are things that we are good at, and our weaknesses are things that we are not good at. But that's not exactly true. Our strengths are things that give us energy, and our weaknesses are things that sap our energy. And that blew my mind because early on, like I graduated from college and I was trying to think of what I would do as a grown up with a degree in psychology that wasn't working in a halfway house or going on to a PhD kind of path. I'm like, what do I do with this passion that I have? I'm a good writer. I write very well. My sentence structure is great, my grammar is great, I've good vocabulary, but the process of writing is agonizing to me. Like I could send you an email, but if I have to craft an email, that's going to stress me out to no end. If I had chosen a career based upon what I perceived as my strength in writing, I would have had a miserable career. I'd have wanted being a technical writer or something, and it wouldn't connect to my heart at all. So when you think about your strengths, it doesn't mean necessarily that they are things that you are good at. If you love to play the guitar, but you're only just learning, that's still a strength if it gives you energy to do that thing. And that means that you will get better and better at it because you're doing it because you love it. And it will turn into uh, a strength that you are good at, as opposed to a strength that just energizes you. I say just as if that minimizes it. This reframing changed a lot for me. It really changed what I thought my strengths were, and weaknesses or things that I thought that I was good at, but actually drain my energy. So I wanted to give you that kind of thought bubble. So within this book, there's a bunch of activities. I'm going to show you just a couple of them because the theme here is about reframing, about thinking about things differently. And uh, as we see in design thinking, we want to get into like our empathy interviews and find out what do people care about? And in this case, what do you care about? So identifying your values is going to be very important as you are developing what your trajectory is for your career. And we've just talked about strengths. What saps your confidence? And where do you have strong confidence? And how can you lean into that? Um, Leaning into community. I'm sure that if you have ever been to a talk on, how to navigate career changes, there's a bunch of advice that you'll get in there that I'm not going to go into today because that's not this talk, is like how if you get laid off, what happens. There's lots of that out there. Um, but all of that is going to say, be with other people, be seen, be with people who see you, who you relate to, who encourage you. Trying to do things alone makes it much harder. And then, last but not least, what possibilities might there be? We tend to have a script in our head about what is true and what is possible based upon what we see before us and what we have learned in our past. But generally, there's a broader perspective that you may be missing if you're not casting a broad enough net, a wide enough view, right, on what actually might be true. So challenging the assumptions that you have about what is true and what is possible can help move you forward. And there's lots of ways to do those things. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. These will be in the slides later, and they are in the book if you want to go deeper and actually like take some of the advice that's in here. It's just a part of what I'm covering today, but I thought that these these reframing canvas ideas might be helpful. And Amazing If, by the way, is the name of their company. The book is called Squiggly Careers, but the company is called Amazing If, and this comes right from there. So here's another tool that you might have seen before in the past. It comes from a book and a website called Innovation Games, and the activity is called Job or Joy. And if we had more time together today, I might invite you to actually take some time and do this activity, but I'm going to just invite you to think about it right now before I move on. So, and this is a thing that I have done with teams as a retrospective activity that has really driven some strong team building feelings where we learn about each other, things that we wouldn't have known, and also sometimes things that job related things that people are doing that they don't love doing. And maybe somebody else in the team actually loves doing that thing. And then they can talk about how they might share the load and redistribute it within the team so that people are doing the stuff that is most meaningful to them, that they love the most. So I've shifted this a little bit. The job or joy activity is the axes are not work and work, like you see here, and then play and not play. But when I swapped out play for strengths, not play is weaknesses, energy boosts, and energy drain, it winds up being kind of the same canvas, but with a reframing in it. So if there are things that you do in your work that give you energy, that's very joyful. And we really want to build this quadrant right here. If there are work things that drain your energy, that's kind of stuff you want to try to stay away from, right? It seems kind of obvious, but the process of thinking about what those things might be for you is a really valuable thought exercise. So same way, if there are things in your life that you have to do that aren't work-related things that drain your energy, whether you're good at them or not, those are chores. And you may have to do chores, and you may have to get better at doing chores, but spending more of your energy in the joyful quadrant than you are in the job or the chores quadrant is going to be important. And then also the not work and energy is what gives you energy that isn't part of your career. When you look at these two boxes together, you may see a picture that you didn't see before. There may be some overlap in things that you didn't think were career possibilities. And there may be things that are right along this line that are both things that you do in your career and things that you do for joy. So an example for me is I love conferencing. I love to go to conferences. I love to engage with others at conferences. I speak at them. I organize them. Community building is really important to me. And I like to sing. And you don't think of singing as a thing that you would do at work unless you cast a really broad net and think about things in creative ways, which the design thinking process will help you to do. And so I brought improv singing to a Play for Agile conference in Canada, I don't know, several years ago, where one of the options was to get together in a group of strangers and do vocal improv, which is kind of terrifying. But what we found was that builds trust fast. And the learning from that activity for the participants was very much that if we stand in our vulnerability with other people who are going to treat us with respect while we are being vulnerable, that builds trust really, really fast, faster than anything I've ever seen on an Agile team in my entire career. So you may not be able to get your team members in your job to sing, but it's an example of how you might creatively think about putting things together that bring you joy. So it was a career thing. The conference had to do with Agile, right? And team building and innovation and creativity and all of that. But it also fell into the hobbies category. So, this may be a good tool for you as you're thinking through what you think of your strengths and weaknesses and how you might be able to bring those to bear in a career. Okay. There are some things that you probably already know that can be applied to yourself, the ways that you work, the ways that you think about careers, the ways that you show up for others and for yourself. So these are things that you already know about change. Make it small. Take baby steps. What is the smallest thing that you could do right now that would add value? You say this to your teams all the time, right? How do we break this big thing down? It's overwhelming. It's way too big. How do we make it so that we could actually get a handle on what we should do next and then, implement that, get feedback and keep going? If you make those bite-size chunks, it's easier. And that's true, especially like I'm going to use job hunting as an example. It's not the only thing, right, that could be under this umbrella, but it's a concrete example that most of us can relate to, whether it's this moment or not. But if you have to get a job, like how do you break that up? That's overwhelming, right? So figure out what tasks you could reasonably do in a day and then prioritize those and make them very small and something that you can check a box and say, this is complete, because there's that little dopamine hit that you get from moving your card across the board from in progress to done. Like just the act of moving things is pleasurable. So making change small. Visualizing your work. A mind map is one way of visualizing work because I've kind of got a design thinking theme here. So this is about, creativity and ideation. But a Kanban board is an example of visualizing your work. A to-do list is a way of visualizing your work, or visualizing your thought process, whether it's work to be done, jobs to be done, or whether it's just something that you're thinking about. You might journal, you might do collages, right, about your experience and what you're feeling. So whatever you need to do to get the thoughts out of your head into a consumable visual format is really helpful. And you know that, right? You tell your teams this all the time. Measure your progress. So if this is about job hunting, you might look back and see how many applications you put out there and in a given time frame, and what was the response to those things, and then getting data about that. That's just one example, right? If you were losing weight, it would be writing it down and making a practice of that, and then using the data that you gather to make decisions about what you do next. You can apply this to anything. Gather data and decide what to do based upon your objective data. Especially when we're navigating change, there's so much emotion that's wrapped up in that, that being able to take that and put it on a shelf and just be super objective about what's going on can be very helpful in grounding you emotionally and grounding you in fact. Retrospect. Take that data and look at it in a whole and decide what to do as a result of it. And taking the time to do that, not ruminate. Ruminate is different from retrospect. Try to stay away from rumination, where we're just obsessing on the same thing over and over, right? And we don't want our teams to do that either. If we have a retrospective, we don't want our teams to be just complaining about the same thing over and over, but to find creative ways of figuring out what you can do, what is possible, and what is really working. So I think that one thing that has been very helpful to me as I have navigated very difficult career changes in my life is remembering the Woody Zuhl, who is the father of mob programming, or ensemble programming, as we often say now, has a catchphrase that says, "Turn up the good." Stop focusing on what the problems are, acknowledge them, but then find what is working and then make that amazing. Like ridiculous. How can we take something that is good and make it super crazy, amazing good? And that relies on your creativity as well. But the time that you take to retrospect and the practice of retrospecting is going to be super valuable as you are navigating this personal change. Limit your whip. When there's too much going on all at once, nothing is getting done. You have a sense of overwhelm. Everything goes slower, you're context switching, and this is a delivery flow tactic, is to limit your whip increases your throughput and also your quality and also your kind of joy in getting work done, because you don't feel the emotional overhead of constantly context switching and waiting and starting and waiting and starting, and the delays that causes. If you can figure out what is the smallest thing that I can do today and do only maybe just a couple of those things, and then you will give yourself the slack that you need. If one thing moves, it doesn't bring down the whole house of cards. So this image means something to me because if I had a guy who was reporting to me in a company a few years back, and it was the holidays, and he was saying, there's so many things I want to do to give back in the holidays. This is a time for me, and I want to volunteer for all this stuff, but I'm so busy that if anything in my schedule changes, if I have to drop something, then I have to move everything else in my schedule. And I said, it's like when you have all those pool balls in the rack in the center of the table and you hit that ball, they all disperse. But if you've got enough slack in between those balls, if you have enough space in between those things and you hit one, it might hit maybe one or two other balls and not the entire table full of balls. And that's true with the things that we do in our lives and the actions that we're taking every single day. If we're trying to do too many of those things, our whip is high, our quality is low, and there isn't any slack for us to be resilient. And I'm going to spend more time talking about resiliency, but I think that these are kind of core concepts. These are things that you tell your teams all the time, that they are very powerful practices for delivery flow. So here's another one: technical debt. Limit your tech debt. How would it be if you only washed your dishes once a week? What if you only washed your dishes once a month? How much harder is it to wash each individual dish? And how overwhelming does that task feel the longer you put it off? So work incrementally on your teams and in your life. Have a backlog. Figure out what you can do, and there will be things on your backlog that you will try to deprioritize because other things feel more urgent. But if you are not making enough space to take care of your own heart, which is the technical debt that I'm referring to in this metaphor, is looking after your own heart, making space for that. And I know that it's hard. I totally know how hard that is to do, because we have all these responsibilities, and you have to get your kid someplace by 6 o'clock, and you meetings and all of that. But we tell ourselves, I don't have time. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to eat right. I don't have time to meditate. Whatever the thing is that you have on your backlog that you are deprioritizing, I'm going to hazard a guess that you prioritize action over taking care of your beautiful heart. And you need to build in some remediation for that tech debt, because your heart is really important. And it starts to look like this if you don't take a little bit of time, a little bit at a time, to look to that. It piles up. And then there's this concept that we say all the time to other people: sustainable pace. It's so easy to say that to other people, right? It's harder to walk the walk about sustainable pace. And I'm the first person to admit, like, I don't necessarily always walk the walk in my sustainable pace, and then I get exhausted and I burn out. Figure out how much you can do reasonably in a day. You may look back and see how much you've accomplished in previous days. Do some capacity planning. Do I have time today? What does this week look like? It's going to be different from week to week, right? What you're able to do within a given time box. Make sure that you can continue indefinitely. You want your teams to be able to deliver at a sustainable pace indefinitely. It's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's the long haul. And we have to pace ourselves so that we don't burn out. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about flow. I'm just going to go through each one of these things. Okay, so there is the flow of value delivery from end to end, from the time we have an idea to the time that it's in the hands of our customers, is a type of flow. But there's another type of flow that is a mind thing. It's a mind state of flow, and you've probably all experienced this in various ways. And the components of flow are: you have a target, you have a goal that you're focused on in order to build this mind state called flow, where we're like highly engaged and super creative and locked in, right? It's a joyful experience, and it's also a resilience building experience. So the first thing is you have a goal. And the second thing is the flow zone is that the task that you're doing is not so difficult that you become like it's overwhelming, and it's not so simple that it's just boring. You want to have something that engages your attention and is interesting enough to hold your attention. Um, the check, act, measure, this cycle here is your retrospective. We do something and we measure it, and we assess how that went, and then we adjust our behavior, right? That's part of getting into the flow experience, is that we have data that helps us to decide what to do next. And these two, focus and concentration, are related to each other. Focus is we are really just doing one thing, and concentration is about how your brain does that one thing. And both of those are important. And then knowing, this is related to your target, is knowing, having a goal, knowing where you're getting to. So there's the focusing in on the target, and then the ability to get there so that you have control in the driver's seat. So these things right here are things that you could actually do to create a flow experience where you're engaged and creative and joyful and productive. The last two on here are not things that you could necessarily do, but outputs of the flow experience. So one part of the flow experience is that you feel like you're completely immersed in this task. You are one with the task. Your sense of self kind of dissolves, and you're one with the universe. You don't think about how you are feeling or what you are thinking even. You're just fully present in it. And then the last one is that you sort of lose a sense of time. You're so engaged in you might go really fast, it might go really slow, but time runs differently when you are in a flow mind state. And we want to create those experiences for our teams. We want to find ways that we can not be interrupting them with lots of meetings while they're trying to build this flow mind state and be creative and productive, right? But we need to do that for ourselves too. So it's going to be different for each of you how you achieve a flow state, but thinking about each of these categories is going to help you to get there. And they're really important to make the time to spend time in flow so that it helps keep your heart up. Flow is not just productive and pleasurable, but it also is healing because of the mind-body connection that we have. And the more time we spend in flow, the more resilient and joyful we are and able to take on other things. One thing that I'm very interested in, and something that I've spoken about in the past, is the relationship between change and identity. We don't necessarily think about those things in the same sentence very often. But change is an identity threat, and it puts a boulder in your ability to achieve flow. When your identity is being threatened in some kind of a way, our prefrontal cortexes freeze. We can't think clearly, we can't do tasks well, we make bad mistakes sometimes if we are in fear. So doing things that you can do to help navigate identity crisis will allow you to spend more time in joy and do the other things that I was talking about. So what I mean by identity crisis, when you ask somebody that you're meeting for the first time, one of the questions that you ask when you're like, what's your name and where do you live, is what do you do? What is your job? And it's really common for people to think of themselves as what they do. And we think of other people as what they do. It used to be true that you did the job that your parents did, whether, if whether it was a trade that your father taught you, or whether it was housekeeping skills that your mother taught you. And this is in the past, right? And people would see you as your job. Today, that's still true, but we have this added layer of autonomy in choosing our job. So it's almost like it's more our identity, because it's not something that was handed to you because of your biological line or the culture in which you live in, but there's this assumption that you're doing this job because that's your passion and that's what you've chosen to do with your life. And it makes the identity job connection even stronger. And when that changes, whether it's by your choice or not. It's easier if it's by your choice, but if it's not by your choice, that's particularly difficult, right? And that's taken away from you. We don't know who we are anymore. And it's a crushing, grief-producing experience. It's our personal identities and our social identities, who we are in context, are incredibly important in the human animal. And we have to find ways of linking changes to identities that we already have. And if you're helping your team work in new ways, and being an agilist is all about how to help people navigate change, right? Like we can't we can't change the way that we work unless we address how to change and what people need when they're going through changes. And change is essentially an identity threat. We don't do things like that around here. What is this thing? Right? If they don't feel connected to what the change is and how it relates to who they already are, either individually or in context, you're going to get a lot of pushback because you're getting fear. You're triggering fear. This is an identity threat. So, with yourselves, as with your teams, find a way that the change that's happening is not different from you're not being asked to be a different person. Uh, it's your identity is intact regardless of the job that you do. Um, Anything that you can do to stay connected to your own sense of self, your own identity, is going to help you to navigate these changes without becoming overwhelmed and stricken by grief. I mentioned the prefrontal cortex. When we are in fear, which is the emotion that comes up with an identity threat, is fear, right? When we are in fear, our brains are producing chemicals that help us to escape danger. And that fight or flight response, with the hormones that flood our bodies when we are in fear, prevent us from thinking clearly. And it may be that there's not actually a tiger about to attack you. So, how do we dial back our fear and get more grounded so that we can move forward? How do we help, and the same thing with our teams, how do we help our teams move forward without having fear? We don't talk about fear in the workplace nearly as much as we should. It's definitely present, and we're just trying to get it done. We don't talk about emotions, but like that's really important to lean into. When we have identity crisis and we have fear, all of these things on this image are experiences that we have, and we tend to go in on ourselves and make our worlds really small. And we might not make good choices. We may not reach out for help. That's the thing you tell your software engineers too, right? Like, how long are you going to work on this problem before you ask for help? Because people want to get it done by themselves and feel proud by themselves. But really, there's no shame in asking for help. And in fact, that's a good practice. We want that. And that's true for yourself too. If you are spiraling into depression and these feelings of helplessness, reach out and get help, because you're not as helpless as you feel that you are, but your depression will eat at you. So when you're going through changes and you start feeling these things, notice them in your heart. Notice if that's going on, and take the smallest action that you could take that would have some meaning. Make a healthy meal. Spend 10 minutes on the yoga mat. Go for a little walk, like just a little tiny thing, and then you'll start to unwind that and go in a different direction. You're reframing it. So when this is the point about being in fear, is that you're not making good decisions and you're running from it without dealing with it, and it becomes ever bigger and bigger and bigger of a challenge and getting in the way of your ability to go through your life productively and joyfully. Checking my time. Okay. I'm going to read this out loud. I don't like to read off of a slide, but I think this is very powerful. Fearful people are more dependent, more easily manipulated and controlled, more susceptible to deceptively simple, strong, tough measures and hardline postures. They may accept and even welcome repression if it promises to relieve their insecurities. Fear is dangerous in a lot of kinds of ways. It's really important to look to the fear that you have in your heart and anything that you can do to minimize that. And if the fear is coming from outside, if someone is stoking your fear from the outside, recognize how you feel about that, and then look at that with a little bit more of an objective lens to the best of your ability. Fear sabotages your brain and wreaks havoc on societies. Some of the things that happen to us when we allow fear of change, fear of identity threats, fear of job loss, fear of anything, fear of financial insecurity, our self-talk tends to get really dark. If your self-talk is not kind and gentle the way that it would be to someone going through something difficult that wasn't you, you don't talk to yourself the way that you talk to somebody else. You should talk to yourself the way that you would talk to somebody else, but it's not common. And when our self-talk, or the way that we think about ourselves and talk, you stupid, can't believe you made that mistake, right? That perpetuates that loop and prevents you from moving forward. And all of these things in combination create burnout. And then we all know what that looks like, right? Like you can't function at all. You just get to a point where all of this fear, all these negative emotions have kind of come together and you just can't function at all anymore. We want to turn that around. We want to be able to reframe that. So how do we do that? Cultivate resiliency. Start to think about ways that you can start to break these cycles. And the one thing that we know from Google's study, Project Aristotle, which you may have been familiar with before, Google decided that they wanted to know what makes a high-performing team. Where do we find patterns in high performance? And they found a lot of patterns. They found, if the teams didn't have the skills that they needed to deliver their work, they weren't going to be high performing. So there were some things that turned out to be true, but there was one thing that was wildly, way, way, way more than the others as an indicator of high performance, and that was psychological safety. While you are going through changes, you have to make your own heart a psychologically safe place to be. And if you are sabotaging yourself with negative self-talk, with imposter syndrome, with addictions, with all of these negative things that come about as a result of our fear, our hearts are not psychologically safe places to be. And it's up to you. No one can do this for you. It's up to you to take action to make your heart a more psychologically safe place to be so that you can find the job that you want, so that you can have these different creative ways of exploring your possibilities, of looking at yourself objectively about what your strengths and your values and your passions are. If you are locked in a cycle of negativity, your psychological safety in your own self is going to be very low, and your ability to do the things that you want to do is going to be hampered dramatically. So you may know this story of the two wolves. It's commonly attributed to Native peoples in the Americas, sometimes the Cherokee. I did a little research. It's not clear where this actually came from. It's attributed in a bunch of different ways. But the gist of it is there's an old man talking to a young child, And he says to the child, inside of each of us, there are two wolves. One is a dark wolf, is angry and bitter and resentful and fearful. And the other is a light wolf, a wolf that has gentleness and compassion and love. And those things are both present all the time. And they complement each other in some ways, but most of the time they're at odds with each other. And the child says, which one will win? And the elder says, the one that you feed. And I think that's a super important way of thinking about when we're navigating really difficult emotional spaces like change, like career changes, for example. We tend to focus on the dark things more than on the light things. And I'll bring that back to turn up the good. We turn on the lights to conquer darkness. You can't conquer darkness with weapons. You conquer darkness by turning up the light, right? So you can't pretend that that other wolf isn't there, but you can focus more on the light than you do on the dark. And that's another thing that will help you reframe how you're feeling about the changes that you need to go through. And it will help you become more resilient. Your mask goes on first. If you've ever taken a ride on an airplane, the safety instructions will always say this: put your mask on before you help somebody else. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is service. If you are not looking to your own well-being, if you are not taking the time to deal with that piling up technical debt of the darkness that you're allowing to own your heart, you won't be able to be a good person with other people. You won't be able to help other people. You might hurt other people. If you are hurting so much, it's possible that your hurt comes out onto other people. So it's a service to other people to take good care of yourself and put your mask on first. So the flow experience is one of those things that can really help you to do that. And even if you take just a little tiny bit of time for these things, uh, those will all help you. So these are some examples of things that you might do to achieve a flow state where, so like yoga, you're fully present, playing video games where you're super engaged and you've got that control and focus, and you have some sense of being able to do, have an effect on the environment. Making music, fully present in the moment and connected to the music is a joyful experience. Being in nature, exercise, it, coding is one way of being in flow for sure. You're completely engaged. Gardening is one of mine. I loved to garden. So anything that you can do, whatever picture would come up for you, to how we achieve a flow state will increase your resilience, and your self-talk will be more positive, and you can start to think about things in more creative ways. Your self-compassion is the foundation of all of it. So you are not more important than anybody else, but you are not less important than anybody else. I'm just going to leave that right there. When we meditate, when we are present in the moment, when we achieve a flow state, we get all of these benefits. An example that I had recently was I have a lot of fear. I'm in fear pretty much all of the time right now. I have big fear. The world is on fire and my career is ever changing, and the appetite for agility in the larger marketplace is certainly changing, and the feeling of stability is not really there. And I can't change that, but I can remember that in one of the squiggles in my career, I was a childbirth doula. It's a lot like being a scrum master. I have a little lightning talk about that. the hours are better now, but the soft skills are pretty much the same. And one thing that I learned when I was a birth doula is that if you are in fear and you tense your body up against the fear, it makes the pain worse. And working with my coach only very recently, I remembered that I may not be able to control the fear. I may not be able to control the situations that cause the fear. I may not be able to control pain directly, but if I can relax my body, if I can meditate, or if I can control my breath, then that fear pain cycle it pulls the plug on that. Right? So you may not be able to change the fact that, I don't know, I'm making this up, but like if you're out of work and you're afraid because you're out of work, you can change that right out of the gate. You can't just snap your fingers and make that go away. It's there, it's present. But if you can take these actions to be present in the moment, these are the benefits that come, and those are real things. That's not woo-woo. This is science. This is measurable, and has been proven in the field countless times, is that when you choose to take action to calm your body and calm your mind, you get all of these benefits, which allow you in turn to make better decisions and be more joyful and more creative and more innovative and be more likely to land the job that you really want. So it's not pretending that the fear isn't there. It's taking an action that helps you navigate that more effectively. So meditation is one of those things, and it's a practice. There is a component to all of this which has to do with discipline. I will tell you freely that that's not my wheelhouse. I'm not great at self-discipline. I'm highly impulsive. But when I have chosen to be more disciplined and have some of the techniques that we talked about earlier with the things that you do with your development teams and your agile environments and apply them to yourself, um, you're more likely to be able to do all the things that you want to do. But it's a practice. It's like your agile practices. They're practices. You can't just take a class. Like one class, a 2-day class does not a master make. You don't read the book once and then have that knowledge at your fingertips forever after. You need to revisit that over and over and over and over and over. So again, a little bit at a time, every single day, working in the direction that you want to go with discipline. And the last practice that I'm going to mention that has a powerful impact on your well-being, which allows you to make better decisions and bring about the changes in your life that you want to create, is gratitude. The practice of gratitude is incredibly powerful. And again, it's a reframing, it's a turning away from the things that stress us out or make us unhappy and focusing instead on all the things that are good. There's so much to be grateful for, and where you put your attention is it's going to grow the thing that you're bringing your attention to. The catchphrase, I think, is where attention goes, energy flows. Um, and so if you put your attention on gratitude, that is incredibly resilience building, and it will help you in the navigation of your squiggly career changes. And for you, I am grateful.